All right. So I'm gonna walk. I've started sort of ripping the UI into its own repo, and part of that has been getting a quick and easy dev environment set up, so that way you can run the Guardian setup UI and Guardian dashboard as well as the Gateway UI I guess an easier manager or an easier way than in the main repo where there's a lot of heavy lifting and stuff with Nix and a bunch of dependencies that um, designers and other like front end devs may or may not have experience with or comfort with. And I've had a few people hop into like the new contributor onboarding running into issues. So hopefully this will solve that, and it'll also solve just some like project management type stuff of tracking issues separately for the UI than from the protocol repository. So with that, the approach that I took was Docker Compose, because Fedimint already publishes all of the everything as a Docker image. So as you can see here, like image is just under Docker Hub, Fedimint D. We've got Gateway D that we're using. And then the one thing that I'm stuck on right now is just connecting up LND to the gateway, but that's not the actual Guardian UI piece of it works. So there's two Fedimint D, I guess, containers in this Docker Compose that will spin up. And if you're not familiar with Docker Compose, you basically just define a number of Docker containers and a bunch of like variables about said Docker containers. You can network them up. So these are all on a common network. That's how they interface with each other. So there's some like networking magic behind it. Yeah, but I guess we can jump first into just like running a Fedimint D Docker image or container. These are the environment variables that you need. So it's kind of like digging through the code to find these and looking at like Debymint and other examples of what's needed. Most of them are self-explanatory, pretty standard. Datadir is just where all the data is going to live for that. You can see over here on the right that I bind the Datadir to just local folders that I then like git ignore. So if you want to like dig into like the database, which from my understanding, there's a tool for that. I've never used it, but it's all there on your local file system. It persists in between Docker containers. This bind P2P is the address that it's listening on with the port for talking to other servers in the Federation. So we just listen on like just everything on this specific port. The URL, this is a configuration. This is what you tell the other servers like where they can reach you at. So this IP address matches the IP address that we give it on this app network that you might have saw defined down here, right? So yeah, just telling you where to find it, where your peers can find you. Very similar thing for the API, where you're binding to basically everything on this port for the API itself, and then this is the URL that a client or anything that needs to use the API can connect to over that WebSocket URL. And then lastly, we tell it like what kind of Bitcoin stuff we're using. So this is influenced by, you'll notice like the 10 IP address. That's because down below we have a Bitcoin D that's running on that IP address. I won't go I'll just assume that most people will know sort of like running a Bitcoin D, so I won't go over that unless there's a desire for it. But this was sort of scraped off the internet, and I didn't put too much thought into this one. I grabbed the config from the Fedimint repo to know sort of like what parameters were needed in configuration, and it's all running Regtest too, so it's local everything. So yeah, that's the Fedimint D. I'll pause there. Like any questions on like just like running a Fedimint D Docker file, or yeah, I guess Fedimint D in general. All right, cool. Then we'll keep moving. So the Fedimint D2, so the second server in the Fed. So this is a two server, two Guardian, whatever you want to call it, federation. This Docker file could be expanded out to have a number of ones, but just for like UI dev purposes, we're starting with two, and then we'll, as needed, we'll expand, or hopefully the setup will become a lot more like configurable. Very, very similar setup, almost exactly the same. If you're not familiar, this is just port binding. So a Docker container runs on the host operating system, and then we're making sure that we can talk to the API by binding the port to like localhost, which is important when we get to the actually running the fedimint and running the UI code. So with that, we'll go on to just the gateway D. So this was, again, something I found just digging through the code. Various configuration. The only thing that doesn't work right now is like this gateway does not talk to the LND. There's like these three key pieces: the macaroon, the TLS cert, and the address of the actual LND for RPC. Is what I found to be like the three key things. Apparently, there's been a refactor recently of the gateway, so there might be some breaking changes in there that I'm just not aware of. So yeah, this runs, but it just does not connect to LND. This was an important thing here that kind of caught me up at first. I guess you have to give gateway D. You have to tell it what kind of Lightning node you're connecting to, so that way it knows who it's talking to, etc. Volumes, again, we're kind of binding some miscellaneous. So I grabbed the miscellaneous folder from the Fedimint repo and just dumped a bunch of stuff in there because it already had lnd.conf and like a bitcoin.conf. So just reusing what existed already as configuration. Again, we do some port binding and some network magic to make sure everything matches up. The depends on is like, this will not kick off until LND is up and running. And there's like some more conditional logic you can put on that. So there's like health checks. You can run commands to like check the health of the service before you even start this other one. So that will probably come into play once I can get these two things talking, because you have to join the gateway to the federation using one of like the connection strings or the connection codes, just like any other client. So that will probably come into play.
You probably don't want, you probably don't have to, if you just like, if we particularly in the setup, if you're developing the UI for setup UI for the Guardian, or if you're developing the Gateway UI, because the Gateway UI should allow you that functionality of connecting later.
Hey, yeah, Jodam, you came in like really staticky and like couldn't understand you. I'll give him just a second to, oh, it looks like he dropped off, probably gonna rejoin.
Check. Can you start it still?
Yes.
Say something. I'll type it up.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what's happening, but you're coming in really staticky. Does anybody else? Okay. All right, so I'll keep moving along here. I mean, the next thing is just an LND Docker image. Again, we do some volume binding. So all the LND stuff is persistent and lives in your local directory under this test data folder. And again, you're waiting until some of these other ones are spun up and running. But that, I mean, that's it for the Docker compose file. As you can see, I've had open on the right side here, like the LND config itself. Not much has changed aside from just like this macaroon path and like the RPC listen. It's basically the same of what we run in like a Devimint setup from the Fedimint repo. So with that, I'll pause again for questions. I don't have to worry about connecting gateway to Fed in this dev environment. Cool. All right. So with that, let's, I guess, run the code, or I'll pause while I get that set up to see if there's any questions or comments. Cool. So if you're in the repo, on this specific branch, I just basically removed everything but the UI. Again, there's a plan to move it to the Fedimint/UI repo itself, so that way it lives in its own thing. But for right now, this is what we've got. And you see at the top level, we've got the Docker compose, and we run a mono repo. So in In the apps directory, that's where our actual like UI code lives. So Gateway UI, Guardian UI, and then in packages is a shared directory where we have some config as well as like some shared UI components. That we have like common theming and reusable bits of the UI don't have to be reinvented for each of the different apps. So the first thing you want to do though is just run a Docker Compose up. And that will spit out all this log. It's one of the things that's sort of inconvenient about Docker Compose is like all the logging is done in the same like terminal. So you kind of color code and deduce what's out. But if you see, we got Bitcoin starting up. We have our Fedimint D2 starts up, and this is probably small to read. So let me zoom in. There we go. Yeah, lots of Bitcoin D logging in here. But we see we have both the Fedimint D1 and 2 starting up, and they start listening on. Of note are these WebSocket ports. So in that Docker Compose, right, we gave them 2 different ports that we were binding to make sure there's no confliction. And with this, it's sort of we're just kind of waiting. I'm gonna kill this Docker Compose and comment out the gateway so we don't get a bunch of extraneous logs. And it's simple as like just Control-C, or you can run Docker Compose down from the same directory, and it will like tear down all of the containers and tear down everything. So that way it's very easy, like up and down. So there we go. That cleaned it up a lot. So now we have the we're listening 2 different Fedimint servers listening on 2 different ports. Let's split this tab maybe. That's not what I wanted. There we go. All right, so once we have the Fedimint running, we're going to go run our we can go run our UI code. So go into apps, and the first one we'll run is just the Guardian, like I said, because the gateway is not really up and running. So we go in here. Well, what you want to do if this is the first time you're working in this repository, from the top level, you'll want to just run yarn. This runs yarn install, and it will install the dependencies of the shared packages and the monorepo. So I guess this is the first time I've actually done this, but it goes pretty fast if you're on a decent connection. Once you've done this, this builds. The reason we do this at the top level is because you need to build those shared dependencies in order for the apps to actually like pick them up. So now that we've done that, now we can go down into the apps and to the Guardian UI. And if you look at the different scripts, so and this is a carryover. Yarn is Nix. Like we don't need that anymore. That will be removed eventually because we're not using Nix. But yarn start is the one you want, and that will bring it up. The only thing I think that I'm missing is declaring an environment variable to tell it where to talk to the backend. But we will see that shortly. Give me a second. Let me bring over a browser. Oh boy. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's expected because we did not run yarn from just the Guardian. So from the Guardian UI repo itself. Oh man. Okay. So let's do. So that at Fedimint UI, that's one of the shared packages. So that's, I'm wondering why that is not. Okay. This might be needed. I think we needed to build, not just install. As you can see, this is a pretty alpha setup as far as like getting things working. So we're still working out the kinks and trying to document all these so we can get people onboarded and up and running quickly. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, cool. Yeah, and that's that. If you don't set the environment variable, you'll get this on the front page, and this is just looking for this environment variable is looking for the this one of these WebSocket connections. So it's pretty easy if you've ever done like React things. Oops, copy that. If you ever dealt with like React apps or just declaring environment variables, pretty straightforward. So here we go. Now we are up and running. And then if we split this, we can open up another one on a different port. So 3000, 3001. And then to make this work, we would just open another. And instead of like, so we have those ports here. So instead of connecting to, I think we use 18184. So just, you want to use the other port now for the other front end to kind of simulate two different Fedimints running on two different servers. So we just update that to 18174, should spin up and open another Chrome tab that I'll close. Oh yeah, it yelled at me because I didn't give it a port. So let me just give a demo where, but you can pass in the port command to tell it to run on 3001. There we go. And then if we refresh this page, we should get another one. And so now you are at the Fedimint setup UI, and you can go through the flow. There are a couple bugs in here with running this setup. So we won't like get completely through the flow, but it does indeed work. See that this is autofilled from the environment variables. So this is one of the bugs that I identified. It's basically this is coming from like an environment variable, and so it's not accurate. If we pass this in here, it won't work. So we need the peer-to-peer connection. Let's see. So 3001 was connected to 71. So we need the opposite IP address. we just grab that. And that should work. Boom. And then this, I'm pretty sure this fails because of another bug. But you can see the backend logs of FedMND doing its thing. Yeah, so this is just another sort of front end bug just from the way that things were configured and running in localhost. But yeah, I've got these documented in an issue on the main Fedimint repo. So with that, I'll pause here, and that's it. That's the that's the quick and dirty demo done at the drop of a hat. All right, cool. Yeah, like I said, the UI repo hopefully will be. I think I'll probably push to the UI repo this weekend when I have some time away from my fiat job. But look out for that, and then I'll post it in the Discord and hopefully get some more UI devs swarming on this thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to stop the stream or doesn't seem like anybody has any other like questions, or I don't know how much deeper we can go on this.
That's okay. I can stop it.
Okay.
Just kind of like a side thing about this, one of the real benefits of doing this UI separation, right, is that like as more people want to do like hosted federations,
yeah,
like so when people come around, like it makes it much easier for them to just be like, hey, we do the back end and then you guys do the front end. They can also modify this UI to fit within their like hosting infrastructure, right? So when we think about like Start9 and those sorts of guys, when they want to integrate them in, this is going to be like super important for that. So thanks for your work here.
Yeah, no worries. At Start9, the wrappers are